It's like one of my favorite airports. It was convenient. It was laid out nicely.
Yeah.
It was chill.
So
there were birds inside of it.
Oh yeah.
Like I'd be sitting there waiting for my flight and watch this bird go land on the drinking fountain. And
so
what's the whole?
So I've been to the Denver
theory?
airport. We have we have an office in Denver. So I've been to Denver airport. I don't know, 50 times more. So, and I've done a little bit of research into this. So the Denver airport one is like 30 minutes outside of Denver, right? So they like basically are like, oh, this is the really metropolitan city. We'll build the airport way over here.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. It's like the most expensive airport that they have ever built by 10x.
Really?
Yeah. It was billions and billions of dollars. There's lots of little kind of like nuance art pieces that kind of go towards like the Illuminati kind of idea of the whole thing. There are vast amounts of underground tunnels and things like that go layers below. And on top of that, there's like I think the theory, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, but the theory is that there are some other races, the lizard people and the grays, which is kind of like a subset of the human beings or whatever. They live underneath the Denver airport, right? And that's why all these tunnels and caverns and all that there. But it's also, I think, supposed to be the fallout shelter for the world. Okay. If like the world goes to shit, like all the leaders come in, the Illuminati all come in, right? It's the Prince of the UAE and Leonardo DiCaprio, and they all like go down into the.
I could see it.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense. You would like it makes perfect sense to build something like that at an international airport.
Yeah.
So then you've got the infrastructure in place to fly everybody in, and then open up the tunnel. And
there's also down. Like I think from North America, it's the most centrally located like massive airport.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter where you are in the country. I think it's no more than a 3-hour flight. Something like that, right? Yeah. There's all kinds of little silly things that get into this whole thing, and you're like, huh. And if you hear one, you're like, yeah. And then as they start coming in, and you're like, oh, well, there's all this stuff there, right? That's not kind of weird. Even like, yeah, there's a bunch of that stuff. And I mean, there's the comedian who does the bit. He's like, listen, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. He's like, you know who I don't believe? People who don't believe in any conspiracy theories. Right. They're like, you're telling me the government's batting 1,000?
I love this guy.
Right? He's like, I have a son who I love to death. He's like, and I lie to that little motherfucker all the time.
Yes. But I freaking love that one.
But that's 100% the fact, right?
Yeah.
There's I mean, UFOs. We have been denying UFOs for decades.
Yeah.
Right? And like I flew in the military. There's people who will be listening to this podcast, guys I flew with, right? And you'll be on night vision goggles and phew. And you'll be like, whoo, back. And you're like, what was that? Oh.
Yeah.
Those were things that happened, right?
Where we lived in Utah, it was outside of, have you ever heard of Dugway? It's a military base.
Yep.
And it basically takes up the entire western part of the state. It's this huge facility. And Stephanie actually grew up on Dugway.
Okay.
And she worked there. And so it is one of those places that, I mean, like oftentimes military bases are, like they're structured in such a way where they, there's parts of the base that you can't go to. There's all of those things are really normal. But there was something about Dugway that was just really wonky. And we used to see stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Because Dugway was on the other side of the mountains. And I remember there was one time I was coming home and there were all sorts of wonky lights at the top of the mountain. And I mean, it was back in, I don't know, 90s or 2000s or something like that. So it was early enough that, sometimes it's like with the invention of drones, it's kind of hard now because it's easy to chalk a lot of stuff up to drones. To drones now. Yeah. But,
20 years ago.
Yeah. And, all the conspiracy people will be like, well, there were drones 20 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, there probably were. I'm sure we've had a lot of technology and things like that. But there's definitely wonky things.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I'm all about that stuff. Like I'm so excited when it comes to aliens, and I'm so ready for 100%. Like, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's, I don't know if it's necessarily what makes more sense to me than, it's not to say that there aren't stuff on other planets and that they come here, but it makes more sense to me that it's other dimensions.
Okay.
Or that they're coming here through other means rather than, because we have such this like silly way of thinking of things where we have to get into a rocket and then we have to shoot that rocket and we have to go, you know, like
why not
that,
just open a portal?
Yeah, that thought process to me is like, that's what I was saying earlier, where it's like we're not the most technologically advanced that we've been before. Because that idea of, well, I got to put everything in the car and then I got to drive that far. No.
Yeah.
That's
here on Earth 616.
Yeah. That's a much smaller way of thinking about things.
Yeah. I like I obviously like all the alien stuff and all that. And I remember we were on, I had to go work in China Lake. So it's in California. China Lake. It's right outside of I think it's called Ridgecrest, California. I think it's the largest base in California per square. Like if you open up a map, you're like, oh, what's this? And there's a big gray area in the middle, and that's China Lake, right? Okay. It's also a boneyard where they had a bunch of like old helicopters and stuff, just where they would test them. They'd be like, hey, turn this helicopter on, shoot a rocket at it, see what happens. Right? Well, myself and a couple guys I worked with just were like, hey, we need you to go to China Lake. And we ran out of gearboxes. Go take some gearboxes off these helicopters. We think they're still good. We're like, all right. So we drive out in the middle of the desert, and it takes forever for us to even get on base. And we finally like, all right. The next morning we're like, we're ready. And they're like, hey, you know, Marge is going to meet you here at this time, 8 o'clock in the morning, be ready. And we're like, all right. So we show up. We're all sitting there. We're in our our overalls. We're ready to work on this helicopter. And here comes this like 75-year-old woman, like the Simpsons, like big gray hair. And she's like, follow me. And she gets in this white Ford Ranger and goes 90 miles an hour down this like road that there's no signs on it. And we're 30 minutes. We're just going, we take this corner, and all of a sudden you look over, and there's maybe the largest, tallest hangar I've ever seen. And my buddy's like, what's that? And this other guy, Taylor, looks, he's like, that's where Optimus Prime is, right? Like, and it was like, yeah. And we drove another 30 miles. Not a sign, not a soul, not a nothing. And then we just show up and we come over this hill, and there's like 30 helicopters sitting in the middle of the desert. And we're like, all right. And we drive over and like, yeah, I guess let's rip this thing apart. It was an interesting week spent in the desert with these guys. We will always remember this trip, right? Because we also like got nothing else to do. We partied in Ridgecrest. We went to the one bar and like drank blueberry brandy and like just did weird things, right? Yeah. But it was a super interesting trip, to the point like at the end I'm out there in just like a pair of shorts because it's 105 degrees or something in the middle of the California desert. We're just tearing apart a helicopter, and you just be like, yeah, what else is going on out here? Like, oh, we don't talk about that. Like they were under strict instructions, like don't leave. Well, I don't know. I don't even know how we got here. Right. Marge is coming back at 1600 to drive us back out of here. Well, I have no idea. Where was the turn at? I don't even know where the hell we are. But yeah, so I know where Optimus Prime is. He's in China Lake, California. Yeah. But there's all kinds of crazy stuff like that out there.